Welcome to the Poundcast. 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 Poundcast. Welcome to the Poundcast. Welcome to the Poundcast. Welcome to the Poundcast.
Brent, I'm liking that new remix from Joseph, aka Vast Flux on Instagram. He, of course, one of our, Poundcast patrons, Patreon subscribers, who every week they just keep coming in. They remix the Poundcast theme every week. We get a new remix. This one's from Joseph, aka Vast Flux. And I'm liking that bass line, Brent. It reminds me of like
Diggable Planets or something like that.
Diggable Planets. You know Sea and Cake? The Sea and Cake, that band?
No.
It's kind of got some vibes like that too.
Maybe I should put the light back on.
So if you want to, you got your light sorted out?
I thought maybe
you look great. You got a nice warm glow. I'm looking like pink.
Uh-huh. You should start getting into that musician.
I'm out in the sun too. I was just playing tennis in the blazing heat this morning.
I'm indoors all the time.
Yeah, how come you're so glowing and I'm pasty and pink?
Because I'm Filipino.
Look, I put on my hat because I'm
a Filipino guy.
Anyway.
So
if you want to support us, if you want to support the Poundcast, just subscribe to us on Patreon, patreon.com/Poundcast. And for that subscription, you do get extended Poundcast episodes and you support us. And you feel great, and you probably get some discounts on merch and things like that.
And on the higher tiers, you can get extended video. But regardless, if you want to see the regular video, that's available for free on YouTube.
Yeah, the Poundcast is now on YouTube. We're putting up our Zooms on YouTube.
And once we get back into the studio, we'll be putting more videos of those up as well.
And before we get started with our guest today, Rachel Mason, director of Circus of Books on Netflix, currently on Netflix. Of course, we got to talk about our sponsor. Look at this. I got some of the product right here with me. Louisville Vegan Jerky.
Wow, look at that. That's a brand new style for the bag, isn't it?
It's a new style. It looks great. We got perfect pepperoni. I have a variety pack here. If you go to LouisvilleVeganFoods.com, you could get this made in the USA, hand-bagged, mom and pop, great product, delicious vegan jerky. And what do we got here? Smoked black pepper? What's this, maple bacon? Come on. It's delicious. I love this stuff. I'm going on a hiking trip next week, and I'll be bringing a couple bags of this for sure. Look at this flavor, Man. You know that band, Man?
Yeah, Man.
They got their own flavor. Sweet chili teriyaki. Look at the art. Look at that guy. What's he doing? These bags are cool.
All right.
You can just hang up your bags. Frame them. Eat the jerky and frame them. What do we got here? Buffalo dill. Oh, that's empty. Ate it.
Buffalo dill.
One of my favorite flavors. And you know what? Here's a new flavor. This is actually my new favorite flavor, sesame.
Gotta try it.
Can you pronounce that?
Sesame gochujang.
Gochujang. Okay.
Gochujang.
LouisvilleVeganFoods.com. Use the code word Poundcast and get how many % off, Brent?
You get a full 20.
That's a full 20. All right.
That's a full 20.
5%, 10% baloney.
You get a full 20.
This is a full 20. All right.
So
and this is my second, this used to be my first favorite flavor, but now this has been moved down to number 2, Smoky Carolina barbecue.
That's the thing about Louisville Vegan Jerky is you can kind of collect them all.
You can't collect them all.
You can collect them all, and you can pick your favorite flavors, and you can rank them. You can stack them up at home and rank them, all the different bags. Pretty fun stuff,
Yeah, it's hard to keep these bags around because Well, now during quarantine times, it's easy, but I brought a bag to a little get together last weekend, a socially distant get together, and guess what? They were empty immediately. Those bags. Those
That's
bags get
interesting.
drained.
How did you guys share that in a safe quarantined kind of way, or not quarantined way?
Well,
but
it was a little outdoor group of
is
4
everybody
people.
everyone's reaching into the same bag? They're
I
going up
put
to
the bag. I didn't open it. I let them all, you pour it into a third container. And then everyone puts on their gloves up to their, their surgeon gloves. They come in like this.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of saying scalpel, they go jerky. And then the nurse has a new pair of gloves each time and puts a piece of jerky in the hand.
They just bend down. Eat it with their.
That's another technique. They bend down into the bowl, dipping for jerky. Like bobbing for jerky.
Bobbing for jerky.
LouisvilleVeganFoods.com, folks. Use the code word Poundcast. You won't regret it. You'll have a great snack.
Not that
you'll be the hit. You'll be the hit of the party. Other people are going to bring. What are they going to bring? Chips and guac. Ugh. Compared to this.
Compared to this, suck my dick.
Suck my jerky.
I don't know.
And tell you what, if you go to dougpound.bigcartel, you can get the Poundcast t-shirt. There's a few left. $10. I mean, imagine finding a t-shirt for $10. It's an unbelievable discount.
Once those are gone, those are really, that's Doug's thing.
Look, I got socks. I know these are my merch. Dougpound.bigcartel. I got socks for sale. Look at this beautiful golden yellow for summer. And of course, the Ask the Dad shirt. And you're going to want to wear the Ask the Dad shirt in your socially distant gatherings all summer long. Things are going to open up. You're going to at least go to these gatherings where you can see other people, Brent.
That's right.
You're going to want to have the Ask the Dad shirt. And I know I got pins. I got all kinds of stuff. I got rocking pins. A little cross promotion there, Brent. Anyway, so Brent, who's our guest today? Can you set this up a little bit?
Yes. So look, she is a musician and an artist, and as you mentioned, she is the director, filmmaker of the new documentary Circus of Books, which you can see on Netflix right now, and Doug and I both have watched. And her name is Rachel Mason. And there's a little bit of an inside connection, but I'll save it for when we get into the episode.
Okay.
Right now.
Let's get it on with.
Rachel
that sounds weird. Let's get on with it with Rachel Mason.
Okay.
All right. Hello, interns. Thank you for editing this.
Who's
doing this, Jack?
Both Jack and Chloe will be.
What's up, Jack? What's up, Chloe? This is the part you cut out. And I hope you guys are having a great day today. Jack, hoping you're having a smashing time in London. What do they say out there?
They say
no one says smash. No one says smashing unless they're like a
sure they do.
Northern London elite. No one's like smash. It's absolutely smashing.
I feel people think that that's an English expression, but I think a lot of people use it. Oh, that dress looks absolutely smashing on you.
No Americans say that.
Yes, they do.
No, they don't.
I think they do.
No, only people who saw a British movie and thought, I'm going to use that phrase, that English phrase. You know what they say? They say, what I want to do this weekend? I'm going to be smashing. That's what they say. I'm going to meet some girls and we're going to smash. They say that kind of thing.
Well, people also say that with regards to Super Smash Brothers, the video game, which I've never played, but I've heard people say that.
Maybe we should keep all this in. This is kind of fun.
Well, maybe we should, in fact. Yeah, maybe we should.
Maybe we should. I'm gonna leave that up to the intern.
And we'll see.
You know,
We'll see.
see
Yeah,
who,
and we'll
see what
see
they do. See what they do.
Yeah, maybe because they won't talk. Who knows? Maybe they will talk to each other. But Jack might leave the stuff in for the video, or Chloe might leave stuff in for the audio, or not. You know, we'll see if there's a difference between the two.
Yeah. So I mean, while we're waiting, you could say how you set this interview up, Brent.
I think it'd be more fun. Yeah, I did because I have a personal relationship, kind of, to.
Okay, we'll hold off
this family, but I think it might be more interesting to have Rachel involved in that conversation.
That's fine. I played. I'll tell you about my day. I played tennis this morning, and I wish I could play tennis every morning. It's such a great, fun thing to start.
I'll tell you what, Doug. Would you ever come out to West Hollywood to play tennis?
Sure. Yeah.
You would play me tennis in West Hollywood?
I'll play you tennis. I'll play you tennis. I mean, do you live in West Hollywood? Aren't you just like in?
Well, there's those parks that are in West Hollywood, that are good parks to go play tennis at, like the Plumber Park or Poinsettia.
I mean, yeah, during there's barely any traffic. It's a great time to get around the city. I went on a bike ride at night last night, and there was nary a car.
Well, speaking of nary,
is that a phrase? Nary?
I don't know, but she's here.
There was nary a car. Oh, she's here. Let's let her in.
Okay.
Nary definition. It means not.
And am I in?
Hi, Rachel.
Oh, wow.
Hi, Rachel.
Oh, hey.
Can you hear us?
Yeah. How funny. Wow. Oh my God. So what's that?
Go ahead. What were you going to say?
No, I think actually the last time you and I ever had a real conversation, you might've been like 9 years old, right?
What?
No, because my brother is Josh Mason, and weren't you friends in elementary school?
Yeah, we probably became better friends in junior high and high school.
Okay.
But yeah, we were in elementary school together, and we've introduced you already, actually, and this is sort of part of the show. Right. So I saved the personal connection for when you were here. But yeah.
Okay. Well, no, if we can get into that later because it's really funny. Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, yes. Well, okay, we'll get into that when we talk about Josh. But yeah, I did. There was actually a period of time when we were pretty good friends, and we were hanging out quite a bit. I went to your house a lot, and we'll talk about all that.
I was the weird older sister, I think.
You were the artsy older sister, and I didn't know much about you, but yeah, I mean, we'll get into that, I guess. I mean, we introduced you already, and
let's get right into it, Brent. By the way, hi, Rachel. I'm Doug.
This is Doug.
Hey, Doug.
I'm
sorry
from
to
the
be
Poundcast.
Nice to meet you. How funny. Really quickly. So we're recording, right?
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
And did you need me to record audio separately on my end? Because sometimes podcasts want that.
Don't worry about it. It's
I think you're okay.
Great. I don't even record my audio separately. We just use my whatever comes in through the thing.
Okay,
but
cool.
Brent, you are a little louder than her, so.
Okay, I'm gonna go like this then.
Yeah, there you go. I think that's good.
I'm over here.
Sweet.
So yeah, Rachel. So first of all, congratulations on the new film, and nice job.
Thanks.
So I watched the film the other night. I thought it was really good. So basically, let's just talk about. I mean, maybe not. We won't spoil it for those who haven't seen it, but we'll talk about like the process of like how you went to make a documentary and then have it be on Netflix. Like, have you made documentaries before? Like, can you give us a little background of your filmmaking background?
Okay. Well, as Brent alluded to before, my background was really art. I was that weirdo art kid who only wanted to be an artist, and then left LA because I thought LA was super lame, and I never wanted to come back. And then while I was doing all my things, in fact, funny enough, you're waving.
If we do this, we have a question, but
okay,
I don't mean to cut you off, but I'm curious, where did you go?
So I went to New York. I sort of skipped around until I landed in New York, and I spent 10 years there. So I actually went to Yale for graduate school, and I was also always a semi-musician in the kind of avant-garde indie music scene. And so funny enough, I've been on bills with Brent's awesome, amazing, talented sister. And it's been, funny enough, the Brent Weinbach connection, I feel like I've been like, my brother was friends with him in elementary school. I realize we're going back and forth, but, we had this funny little rapport right before we started, because I remember being at Brent's house when I was like maybe 9 years old. We had these mutual friends, the Morgans, and they, I think, took me over there, and then I was like, wow. And I remember these adorable little twins, and Brent, and it was like, oh, cool. And Josh,
the twins might not have been in the picture at that time, because they were quite younger.
Yeah.
There was these neighbors, the Morgans, and
they're kind of legendary Hollywood people too.
Sure, yeah, they're stunt people. The dad was in a ton of movies as a stunt person, and he was in like Logan's Run. Actually, he was an actor in Logan's Run, but he was in tons of. I don't know, The Explorers comes to mind. That movie, The Explorers. He was in that, and he's in a ton of stuff.
Yeah, if you look up Gary Morgan, as I did one day, just casually, I was like, oh my God, he's done actually every single movie's major stunts. Like, he's a stunt coordinator. He's like. Yeah. That guy. And so they would have these awesome birthday parties with a trampoline that my mother remembers was like directly over the side of Laurel Canyon Mountain, like, with animals everywhere. So I think the Morgans brought me over to your house one day.
I remember, Josh, your brother, as early as 5 years old, he used to hang out with Bonnie a lot.
That's what it was. Yeah,
and
Bonnie
used
Morgan.
to hang out in the bedroom, in the bedroom a lot together. Yeah. Actually, at 5 years old.
Before Josh was gay, I think Bonnie was his secret girlfriend.
He was. She was, and I would always think, oh, they're in the bedroom together.
Yeah, because that was his girlfriend.
Yeah. Now that's a kind of a reveal in the documentary.
Yeah.
And I guess you're okay with spoiling that. And
at this point, there's no major spoilers. Let me think, because I don't know, spoilers. It's so weird. I have to remember I put my Hollywood brain on sometimes and think about rules. But I'm not. So to answer your question, I was always an artist, and that's part of what led me, I think, in falling backwards into a very successful documentary, which was partially because A, I think we did make a really great doc, and then B, it's sort of the weird collision of the timing of, I think, the fact that there is somebody like Ryan Murphy in a very powerful position in Hollywood right now who could come along. And I thought for certain this doc was going to live and die in the outfests of the world, the queer LGBT film festival circuit, and that they would all love this film, and that would be awesome. And I'd move on to my next project. I didn't realize this project would be like the ultimate project that would launch me into having meetings with all these interesting people, and that Hollywood is now a super interesting place, and that people like me are welcome here. I just always felt like when I was growing up, in the 90s, it was not really interesting content that I liked on television. So, weird, interesting comedians like Brent, I didn't really see. I had to dig for John Waters and all the go to the Vidiot stores of the world or the New Art Theater to find stuff I was really interested in. So my first film that I ever made was an art house musical feature film where I wrote a bunch of songs, wove them together, and I toured it as a live karaoke performance piece. And that film actually did surprisingly better than expected, because I applied to real film festivals and I got into a few, and it's called The Lives of Hamilton Fish. And it's kind of an obscure story. 2 men that truly did die on the same day in 1936, and one was a serial killer and the other was a politician. I wove their stories together, and I actually fell in love with filmmaking. I fell in love with directing. And the Circus of Books project was something that I figured, okay, well, at some point when I need to, I'll make this film, because it's just a cool personal story. But then my mom, of course, said, well, we're closing the store in Silver Lake. And I was speaking to a producer about it in New York, and he was like, well, Rachel, if you are going to make the film, you have to do it now, because as soon as she closes the store, it's going to be gone. You can't just, expect to make that film at any point. And I realized, oh yeah, documentaries, you have to catch them at the moment when you can often. So that's why I came back to LA, was to make the documentary. A bunch of like personal things led me to be able to just say bye to New York, and I came back here. Yeah.
So, okay, a couple questions. When did you, over what period of time did you shoot the documentary? How many, was it over a number of years or?
Yeah, it was about 3 to 4 years, with a big break in the middle to finance and try to like knock on people's doors to help me get the rest of the funding I needed to make it. So yeah, it's that amorphous question. Yeah.
What was your first step? Like, did you have a camera? Did you have a camera operator? Did you have did you do it yourself? You know, things like that.
Yeah, this was my first camera, my phone right here. And I was following my dad around as he did his rounds in the neighborhood. And it was just really hilarious, you know, when I actually said, okay, well, I'm just going to go to LA and start shooting and seeing what my parents do on a daily basis. Cause I didn't really know. I was always, you know, whenever I would see them in the office, it would be mildly amusing, you know, to see my mom reading off porn titles, and she's a total expert in everything gay porn. So yeah, go ahead.
I just realized we should, just in case anybody hasn't yet seen this documentary, just to catch people up. Basically, it's about a place, a bookstore called Circus of Books, but that was run and owned by Rachel's parents, Karen and Barry, and
who we should say are kind of like, you know, a
conservative, well, not conservative, I wouldn't say conservative, but I mean, they are not
just like an everyday kind of family. Like,
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
They're not out there like weirdo type people. They're like, your dad actually worked on Kubrick films and did different
special effects. Yeah.
Special effects and stuff. And then somehow this landed in his lap by the bookstore, owning the bookstore. So that's the gist of the film, is like this normal family with these kids, but the parents did kind of a secret. They almost had a double life because they kept you kind of sheltered from what the hardcore gay bookstore was, right? A little bit.
And it's not just books, it was videos, and they were also ultimately, they were financing the productions of gay porno films as well. And so that's what this is about. And it's also about how there's this kind of personal story that's like about the family and stuff, but then there's also kind of a bigger or like a more macro story about the gay community in West Hollywood, and how the store kind of became a hub for the gay community in West Hollywood, right?
Totally. I mean, I basically was painting the picture of like the changing cultural landscape of America through a little teeny tiny mom and pop store. And then also that same culture that like fed right into my own family experience with my brother and his journey into coming out of the closet. And in a strange way, you know, all the parents that I grew up with were much cooler than mine. You know, Brent, your parents do something in the industry? I forget.
My dad was involved in the past with in the 60s and 70s with making some films and stuff. Yeah.
But like, I remember, so we had friends like the Morgans, and, you know, I would go to people's houses and there was like cool art on the walls, like artsy stuff, hippies, you know, you lived in Laurel Canyon, and it was like, oh, these are really interesting, awesome parents. And my parents were totally square. My mom was so Jewish, like painfully Jewish. And then, you know, all the things that make a family really boring. That's what my parents were, you know, and not interesting, not fun. And I would go and hang out with other parents that, you know, like we were just saying, were stunt people, or they were in the movies, they were actors, they were, you know, in bands. And my parents were not that. So I actually always thought that everything they touched and did was completely boring. And then when I got into high school, my friends, I went to high school at Cleveland High School in the Valley. So I would take the bus out to the Valley. And as I lived in Hollywood, my friends were making trips out to Hollywood to come to all the different cool, weird gay places. And Circus of Books was on that route that they would go to. And so I remember telling them that my parents owned that store, and they were like, Rachel, what? Oh my God, we need to meet your parents. They must be so cool. And it was like, no, they're actually not at all. And, you know, the schism of that was just so, somehow it didn't fully hit me until later, because I always had to rebel so hard against my mom. Like, she was a true authoritarian parent, you know, like there's this great scene in the film where Josh is like having his bar mitzvah, and you know, if you had, my friends had cool bar mitzvahs where, you know, you could read like one sentence in English and be done with it. My mom, of course, made us read like the entire Torah passage in Hebrew, and it took like 6 months to memorize the whole fucking thing. So my mom was she was that type of uber Jew.
By the way, the only bar mitzvah I ever been to in my entire life was Josh's bar mitzvah.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's the only bar mitzvah I ever went to in my whole life.
Brent, are you in the movie?
Wow,
No, I don't
that
think
would
so.
have been so cool. You know,
Wait, so is that the
there's
scene
footage-
where he's reading it and she's kind of like,
yeah,
you know,
watching
like
yeah.
very
That's a
sternly to make sure
Totally.
he nails it, and he's
Exactly.
in the temple, like,
yeah, he's on the stage, and that was actually his rehearsal, because when you have a bar mitzvah and you have to rehearse, like you go there every week for like 6 months to work on it if you're going to do a really hardcore type. And actually the longer full scene was my brother's shoes were really hurting, because he always had, his feet were, you know, he's flat-footed and his feet were always killing him. And so he's like, Mom, I can't do it anymore, my feet are killing me. And she's like, you need to stand there and be respectful of the Bible, you know. And the whole thing is like, oh, so hilarious, because when I think back on it now, like, wow, when my older brother had his bar mitzvah, the night before his bar mitzvah was when my parents got served with the FBI, you know, investigation that was going to potentially send them both to jail.
yeah, that's another part of the movie too. The felony charges for what is it, indecency, or is it
obscenity?
Shipping obscenity to
cross
the middle district of Pennsylvania. Yeah,
which it wasn't legal there or something like that.
Which that was entrapment too, because they ordered some FBI agent ordered it. That's entrapment.
That's the government using our tax dollars to good use. Yeah, they create these little sting operations, and because what else is there to do but try to get little mom and pop porn stores in trouble, and you know, the culture wars of the late 80s, early 90s. And you know, it really was just so lucky that they didn't go to jail. And you know, I think that might have been why my mom was so all about being buttoned up and doing everything right, and having us be such hardcore overachievers on the other side of things, might have been to, like, you know, make sure nobody ever would question this perfect family.
What did you I just wanted to know so you found out about the sort of more secret parts of their store through your friends in high school?
Yeah, and I found out about even more stuff later, like in college. Like I had heard about sort of the legend of Jeff Stryker, because he's kind of the ultimate gay porn star. I mean, there's like nobody more big than him in the entire world. He's just, in fact, getting him in this film to a lot of people in the gay world was like almost like the visualization of Jesus Christ. People are like, oh my God, he's still alive. And I didn't know that Jeff Stryker was such a huge deal until, you know, I was completely a part of the LGBT world ever since, you know, just being in the arts, and also just my friends, my queer like group, that's who I was with. And so I would learn all the different funny facts, you know, and I would say to my parents like, oh wow, you know, my friends know about this guy, Jeff Stryker. And they were like, oh, well, we made a bunch of his videos. And I'd be like, really? Okay. You know, so they're casual about all these things that to people in the gay world, you know, they'd be so fascinated. So I'd tell them these little stories. So when I made the documentary, I really just followed all the little threads that had always been sort of like the mythology of my parents. But they, you know, my mom is so, you know, overly matter of fact, classic Yiddishy, like, well, whatever, you know, just doesn't matter. No one's interested. You know, she's so her way. And that was her basic mantra the whole time I was making the film, was like, this isn't going to be interesting to anyone, Rachel. You should know that. This is a sad, pathetic thing that you're doing, like many of your other projects that nobody cares about. So let this one go, and no one's going to miss it.
When was the first time you saw pornography?
You know, probably like everyone else. I mean, I was sort of like
from your parents' store? Or was it before that?
Well, here's the thing. A little side note, I'm not that into porn. I find it like amusing in a weird way. I'm like, okay, maybe it's because I saw it out of the corner of my eyes in their store, and for us it was like, don't go into the over 18 section. So of course we would run in, and I would see all the covers. And funny enough for me, I have a nostalgia for gay porn. Like I really do. I have some part of me that feels like it's tied to my childhood, like just these box covers, the magazines, these beautiful men. I just loved sort of I don't know, I really have a nostalgia for it in this sort of way. But I'm trying to think if watching porn was just never a thing that I got into. And I don't really know why, except that I think, it's just, I don't know. I think I had like a totally fine like experience with people in the real world, and I don't know.
Well, that's not what I'm not
person.
assuming you are into porn. I'm just saying what I meant was, so how young were you when your parents bought the store?
They were, I was.
And then how long did they keep it a secret from you until you found out, oh, they're doing like adult stuff?
So they were involved in adult stuff from the minute I was even born. They started in 1976 and I was born in 1978. They were distributing Hustlers. So they already had like magazines. They were doing it all. I mean, yeah, basically I was born into it. But no,
when did they, I guess, yeah. When did you realize there's porn there? And yeah.
No, I just remember, I mean, also it's a funny thing. I there was an over 18 section, and I really thought every store had an over 18 section. So it's like this kind of thing that, I just really did. I thought, okay, well, that's the over 18 section. It must be really boring in there. And the only reason it's interesting is because I get chased out of it if I run in there. But I didn't, it's the funniest thing, because I would say, that my family and I are kind of the right wing's example of like what childhood exposure to porn really looks like, which is like, maybe it made me less interested in it. I don't know. But I really kind of saw it as the thing that my parents were involved in, and it wasn't interesting to me. And I will say, my partner is actually a porn star, funny enough. So, and I'm still like not that interested in watching it, even though I could easily see and access it. I'm very intrigued by the world of it.
That's interesting. Wow.
Yeah. His name's Buck Angel. He's actually a transsexual porn star. He's like the most famous in the whole world.
Yeah. No, he's very well known. Yeah.
Yeah, and he'd probably be a fun guest for you. He loves these kind of things. But he's really like, I have this access, and I find that world really fascinating, and I find the way people treat that world really, like the way he gets treated, and it's just this interesting, almost like, maybe I'm an anthropologist of like the porn ecosystem, rather than somebody that like really watches it for my own like viewing enjoyment. Although I'm intrigued by it. I'm intrigued by like the different eras within it. There was historical changes, and I love like old vintage porn from the 60s and 70s, like especially in gay culture. Like that's kind of it's like a marker of the actual cultural experience, because there was no other record of gay culture except in porn. So for me, there's sort of like maybe a slightly academic view of it all that
the documentary makes it sort of look like the store was entirely gay porn, or mostly just gay stuff, right? But it wasn't that. They also had just books that had nothing to do with porn there, right?
Well, yeah, and also there was straight, and there was trans porn, and there was all kinds of other stuff. But the majority of the people that came in and really indulged in it and loved the store were gay men, especially in West Hollywood. But both of the stores catered to their niche community. So in West Hollywood, they had tons of fashion magazines, and actually, it was funny. Rose McGowan said to me, she was like, I only went in there for the fashion magazines. And they had this amazing selection that was just like the European fashion magazines. And then the one in Silver Lake had a lot more comic books, because, there were more people into comics out there. And, but in the last few years, my mom was so desperate for customers that she was just stocking the store with like, anything she would find from a thrift store. So like she would go to Out of the Closet and get like Beanie Babies and t-shirts and random stuff. And the store had this totally different like hodgepodge feel, which I kind of loved, even though earlier in its history, it really was like a very real place for, the huge variety of mainstream publications and underground publications. It was cool. It was like everything.
I've been to an art show at the Circus of Books, the Silver Lake
Oh,
one. Yeah.
well, I probably organized it with a friend of mine named John Knuth. Do you know John?
I know John. Yeah.
Oh, cool.
This was
Yes,
like over 10 years ago, probably.
totally.
Yeah.
So I was in New York at the time, and John had I met John. I lived in Chicago for like 1 year after I graduated UCLA, and I went to Chicago for a year after that, and I met John there. And then he moved to LA, and he was like, "Hey, Rachel, can we do some art shows in the store?" And so I remotely would, help John set them up and deal with my mom, who was always really, irritable about whatever was happening. And but we had like amazing shows, and some of the best artists in the city, really like incredible art shows were
Yeah,
there.
it was cool. It was cool.
Yeah.
So back to the movie real quick before we.
Well, you were asking about Ryan Murphy's connection and how he got involved.
Yeah.
And
So,
then,
well, I was asking like how did you start? How did you get the ball rolling? Like, if
okay, yeah,
just for anyone listening who says, I
a
want to make a
filmmaker.
documentary about something, like, how did you start it?
Well, yeah, I mean, for anyone's listening, Circus of Books is kind of like the dark horse documentary that nobody ever thought would do anything for. So it's a really cool, I would say, uplifting story for that, struggling documentary filmmaker who is hopeless, because I was totally that person a few years ago, and it was like, oh my God, starting this documentary, I thought it was really interesting. And then I would show it to people. And of course they were like, well, that's good, but good luck with that. Not gonna really, I can't imagine this having any commercial value, but good luck with your project. And but that's actually, for me as an artist, I was never afraid of that space, because that's the whole thing I've ever done, was like, all right, well, you do stuff because you're inspired to do it, you don't expect it to make any money, but in a strange way, because of the nature of filmmaking, you need so much money just to make it. You actually do have to knock on doors and get approval and get financing. And so I started with nothing, and talked to some people who were in the documentary and film business, and they were like, okay, well, good luck with that, but I don't really see it going anywhere. And so I really just went ahead and said, all right, well, I'm going to figure out a way to start this. And I met a really great producer named Cynthia Childs, who actually felt like very passionate about it and thought, I can figure this out. And then from then I met another producer named Adam Barron, who connected me to a guy who gave us some seed money, which was awesome. And that little tiny bit of seed money was just enough to get the early production going and get us to have the budget for a DP and some people that could actually put the thing together. And then from then we were able to shoot for a year, and then I had a sizzle, which I started showing around, and I had another producer that came in once the sizzle was created. It was really cool. And that led to another production company coming involved from the UK called Passion Pictures. And they brought the film to Josh Braun, who is the world's most awesome sales agent for documentary films. He did American Factory and pretty much like 6 of the 12 Oscar winning films of the last decade, and I didn't actually, in some ways my ball was just rolling, and I didn't stop to say, wow, that is actually so incredible. But a few things like that happened on the business side that were totally incredible and awesome. And Josh signing onto the project and then becoming an EP, he was so inspired by the film, loved it. He shared the film with Ryan Murphy. And then Ryan came on when the film was pretty much done. And I just was like about a week away to getting into the Tribeca Film Festival. And Ryan was like, I want to help this film. I love it so much. And, I'm an artist. I'm a weirdo. I come from out of the non-TV, world. And so I met Ryan at Netflix, and I was like, okay, great. Well, I need to make this film happen in a week. I need $20,000 to get my post-production financing. And, Ryan is like the king of television and the gay king of television.
For those who don't know, can you just tell us who Ryan Murphy is?
Well, okay, he's the guy behind Glee, Pose, American Horror Story, American Crime Story,
Nip Tuck.
Nip Tuck, basically just the guy. He was on the cover of Time magazine recently holding a television set. He's like the most powerful gay man, but probably the most powerful man in television right now. And he has deals with FX and Netflix, and his deal with Netflix says that he can basically greenlight any project that he wants and turn it into a TV series. So when I met him, he was like, wow, I love this. I can picture it all as a TV series, and I was like, okay, cool. But I have a week to get this into Tribeca for the film festival. And, my head was not in like, how exciting is this that Ryan Murphy's attached to this project? It was just in like finishing the documentary, because when you work on something that long and hard, it's insane. So, it was really mind blowing to me after the film came out to see the power of Ryan's influence on the film and what he actually was able to do, just being attached to it, because he really, he's that guy in Hollywood. So Ryan Murphy being an executive producer on the film has led the film to just sort of leap from, being maybe one of many Netflix films to like being at the top of the heap on Netflix. And it's been doing really well on the platform. So, that's the other piece of it though, is that Ryan can turn it into a TV series. And that's like the next potential phase of the whole project.
I was just going to say, I really like Ryan's show Hollywood that's on Netflix.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's shocking
really well
how much
done.
Ryan's doing. And
how does he do it all?
I mean, he actually has an army. And when I met him, I think he said he has like 3,000 employees.
Oh my God. Well,
Yeah.
how would that, just curious, how would you translate this or transcribe it into a TV show as opposed to a doc?
Well, it's so interesting when you think about when you make a doc, there's so many awesome stories that I couldn't tell in this one doc. So I have, pages of things that we could just immediately write up into the shocking, funny, amazing stories and the twists and turns. And, I think what you get in fiction in general, actually a writer told me this, and I think it's really true. You're able to get closer to the truth in a different way because you dive into the character's struggle. You're actually inside of the heads of these people. So, it would be really interesting to see what it was actually like for my mom, in that moment as her child is having a bar mitzvah where she thinks she might actually go to jail the next day and potentially face a judge and not be able to go and suddenly have to tell her friends and all this stuff. So there's this, I could see it really easily translating into a cool show. And when Ryan said that to me, I was like, oh yeah.
Well, what I'm saying is, so like you kind of retell the story in a fiction dramatized version of that. It's not like a sitcom at Circus of Books and it's like that 70s show. That's another angle. I'm just saying that could be another way to go.
Yeah, I mean, in a way, there was something somebody sent me. It was kind of funny. It was like from the 70s, and it was a spoof on like the old Jewish gay couple that happens to run a hardcore porn store, but it wasn't a gay porn store because, that is actually who often ran these porn businesses, are just people you wouldn't expect who are just like regular people. And so there was a 70s show that actually did a little skit like that. But back in the days of like, it was something like, Andy Kaufman era, kind of like more maverick television in the 70s. So I saw something like that was really funny, and I remember thinking, oh, that's totally my parents.
This is how we do it. We go like this. We do a multicam. Okay, we get a live studio audience, and the set is just mainly the store, and it's run by clowns. We just do a little bit of a loose interpretation of the documentary. So it's clowns that run it, and they're producing porn, and that's how it is. It's a clown sitcom.
Clowns.
It's called
Circus of Books, right?
Yeah. That would make sense. And my production company is called Future Clown because when I was doing performance art, I had a clown character that I would don in order to sort of make fun of American politicians. But no,
was that at all though a little bit influenced by the Circus of Books theme or whatever?
It's so weird. I never put the two together until I was actually like putting the credits into the film. I'm thinking, wow, that's actually a weird thing. I've always had a fascination with clowns on the other side of the spectrum, more in a space of like the esoteric weirdness of clowns, like them being like weird shaman-like creatures that sort of exist between worlds. So yeah, but I think it was also in the 70s, like a kind of circus clown theme that sort of overlaid a lot of stuff. Like there's Jumbo's Clown Room. There's a lot of things in culture from the 70s and earlier that like when they were weird and seedy would get like a clown or circus connection. So
Actually, a documentary about Jumbo's Clown Room could
oh yeah, no,
could
that
be could be
should
something,
happen.
you know. Yeah.
No, I feel,
Let's get
yeah.
Ryan on the phone right now. You know, let's see
Well, I've become that
Nice
person
guy.
that people now go to for
Nice
the
guy.
like weird gay Jewish/queer, LA historical record stuff. So I'm
Did you
happy
see
to do
this
that.
movie? Did you see this movie called Other Music?
Yeah. So I met the director at Tribeca. We premiered at the same festival. Yeah.
It's
No,
kind of
and
it reminds me of Other Music because it's about a beloved store closing. That's kind of an end of an era.
totally. And
But
actually,
yours had a lot more narrative and drama going on. That was just sort of a store closing. But anyway,
yeah, I know.
it was
Well,
still an enjoyable film.
every doc can't be about gay porn and family woven into one. But I actually I knew the owner of that store when I lived in New York, and I met him actually at my friend's deathbed. Actually, my friend was dying, and this guy was so cool, the owner of the store, and it was so crazy. He put together this amazing concert of all of the cool musicians of New York, and it does also feel like a real New York story, like.
Yeah.
Those kind of stores. Well, LA too, do you remember going to the video stores in LA that were like,
Used to go all the time.
yeah, it was so cool.
2020 video, 94
Right.
video, Tower video.
Oh, Tower, gosh.
Um,
Yeah, no, it was such a cultural place for you to just like hang out and see what was happening. Yeah, I totally miss all those places.
yeah, I mean, I will say
Do you think culture kind of sucks now because
Mhm.
when we were kids in the 90s, 80s, we'd have to go and dig stuff and find like little gems, but now it's just like it's all just online and it kind of just washes over.
it still takes work though, a little bit, I think.
It takes some work, but it's not as like special when you don't like go to a
Yeah.
place, it seems a little less special.
There's
Yeah.
something about, I think, the way, like, I remember finding like my whole thing was finding like the most obscure of the most obscure of the most obscure shit, and like a
Right,
friend would
yeah.
be like, wow, check this out, Ethel Meatplow, this band, they only perform once, and these really cool weird, and you get a CD, and it was like, wow, the amount of effort it takes for a band to make a CD in the 90s, they actually had to really work at that. And so I think the difference now is like, hey everyone, I'm up on SoundCloud, and then the next minute you could be an overnight hit. And then there's like, I think there's a lack of that kind of commitment that the old freaks had to do, like artists really, like, wow, no, we're gonna actually like do in-store performances, and you have to show up. And so I think in a way the three of us are really lucky that we experienced that, because
You
it was
gotta,
a cool
you gotta
thing.
go make the flyer and cut it
Yeah.
out and then make the punk
Mhm.
flyer. And
Yeah,
I used
all
to
that
do that.
stuff.
I used to do that all the
Now it's
time.
just like put it on Instagram. Who cares?
Exactly.
Yeah.
There's just, I think the apps have made it all super easy. And I think it's great that, like, if you're that one weird goth kid in like, Needles, California, and everyone else is like going to kill you. Well, okay, that's great for Instagram. And back in the day, you had to like maybe find a zine and mail, right, in the mail for. I remember like the Riot Girl movement was so exciting because my friends were like mailing zines around, and people would get them from like Seattle. It was really interesting.
So now you were kind of, you say you're kind of like an you were kind of distant to your family because you felt more sort of interested in kind of weirder kind of stuff, and your family was more straight
Boring.
ahead, or whatever, in your mind at least,
Yeah.
growing up. Did this documentary help make you feel closer to your family or not? Or did that happen earlier when you started learning more about your family and the things they do?
Yeah, I think it's mellowed me out, maybe mellowed my mom out a little bit too, because I think her paranoia with me was that I was always just so out there and weird, and I'll never ever make it in the world because what I do is just so insane. and she did not have any artistic people around her except my friends, who she thought were really weird and crazy and like not grounded, and to her, my friends who are totally comfortable living in a little closet, like they don't seek to have a lifestyle that might be like upper middle class or something like that. She just came from this perspective of like, well, don't you want a job and health insurance? Like that is like, go towards that. And that's actually like her actual, and sure, I get it. Like health insurance is actually awesome. Thank you, Obama. But at the same time, you know, that 9 to 5 job that like she was desperate for me to always have, it was not something I actually wanted. And, you know, I would try a million different things to avoid having a regular lifestyle. So, long story short, doing the Netflix, getting this far and having Netflix approval has really been this thing where, you know, I actually sold the film. It was like a great business move, you know, it looks like to her, like for the first time
so
ever.
it's more like this. It's more like, okay. So the success of the film is kind of what brought you closer. Not, I was curious if like if the production of it brought you closer to her and spending more time maybe than you normally would have.
I
or
don't
something
know.
Like that.
You know, okay, on some level that, but on the other side, you know, I had to become a business person. And I do think my mom is such a hardcore businesswoman that it's like making a smart business move really is like the ultimate sign of intelligence. And so I think she now is like, all right, I get it. This was a smart move. You totally, yeah, I can respect that.
Is she at all self-conscious at all about it? That because it is being seen, and she maybe when she was agreeing to be in it, she didn't think it was going to be seen.
Well,
you
yeah,
know,
it's really funny. She's always now complaining about how she hates being famous, and she'll go to the grocery store and she's like, you know, people say hi to me at the grocery store, and you know, I have my mask on. They shouldn't be able to tell that it's me, you know. And my dad, on the other hand, was like, you know, I was at the bank yesterday. I was waving to all these people. They're saying he loves it, but yeah, she's like, you know, my mom will find fault though with pretty much everything and anything, and that's kind of maybe her. I've found a way to have this like lovingly combative relationship with her that's actually our thing at this moment. So there's no you know, there's no good way to ever expect any sort of raw compliment from my mom. It's not a thing that will happen, but you know, it's I can know that she appreciates the film, although what she said is that it's a good film, but she wishes it was about someone other than herself.
What about Josh? Was he at all self-conscious about sort of talking about his stuff and whatever?
Yeah, I mean, the thing with Josh is that in a way he's like the total unsung hero of the film. Well, he's a sung hero too, actually. He's got now a fan base, which is cool. But you know, it's sort of like this group of people that have written to him all over the world that just say, you know, hey, I'm also gay, and your story was so my story, and I could totally relate to that conversation with your sister. And you know, in a strange way, I didn't realize when I was making it, but like that scene with Josh and me was a pretty new scene for cinema. Like there's been lots of coming out movies, but the way that we kind of actually dove into that back and forth, where, you know, I hadn't known that Josh was that
You had no idea at all.
Not to that degree. And I really, you know, when I was filming the scene, I was like, what, you were getting a one-way ticket? Like in what world, on what planet would our parents disown you? But he was so trapped in,
it's really interesting.
Yeah, he was so trapped in sort of the, you know, his imagination of what the worst possible outcome of like coming out of the closet would look like. Meanwhile, I was super gay with all of my crazy gay friends, and I took a girl to prom. I was like in your face gay, you know, kind of like, you know, and my parents were like, well, whatever Rachel does is going to be ridiculous. And so, but Josh was like the perfect child. So the gayness of, you know, crazy gay, ridiculous was what I represented. Josh represented like our perfect child who has to be perfect, who's like the last chance for my mom, you know, in her mind. He was like the most amazing. My older brother was very nerdy and, you know, kind of antisocial. So Josh was like this charming, wonderful, beautiful child that she just thought, okay, you're going to have a perfect wife one day and Jewish kids, and it's all going to work out.
Bonnie Morgan is going to be your wife. And by the way, you know what's kind of crazy, by the way? I know Doug has a question, something to say, but when I was watching the documentary, I kind of kept on thinking. I watched it with my sister, and we kept on we thought you look like Bonnie kind of a little bit.
Well, that's cool. She's really pretty.
Anyway,
I always thought they were way prettier than me. That's cool. The Morgans.
Doug,
Bonnie, Brent, did I meet Bonnie at the Magic Castle?
Yeah, you might have.
I met some kind of family, and then her dad was all, they're all wacky and like,
they're very like kind of zany, and they're very they wear very kind of sort of loud, sort of circusy kind of outfits and
Performers.
stuff. Yeah, they're vaudevillian kind of types, you know.
Gotta get them on the show. But
they would be amazing. Well,
Bonnie's a stunt person as well. She's a stunt woman.
She's a contortionist, isn't she?
And a contortionist too.
Can squeeze herself into a box this big. Yeah, they've never left the family fold, which is actually kind of awesome. You know, my family's the opposite. My mom was like, don't do it. And you know what's really interesting though, as a little side note, to show how funny this is, when I ran into Gary recently. So my mom is such a hardcore Jew although I don't know if this is outing them, but they're very out about it. They're Jews for Jesus, which is a type of, I don't know.
Really?
It's a thing. Yeah. So it's a type of religion that is kind of esoteric and small, and it's like a small thing. But my mom in her head always thought it was a cult. And so it's so funny because she gave me the hardest time about going over there because they were Jews for Jesus. You know, say nothing of like the whole, well, you run a gay porn empire, Mom, that people could have a problem with that. So I remember one time I ran into Gary recently here in LA, and I just casually mentioned, you know, oh, I don't know if you remember us. And he goes, Rachel Mason, your brother Josh Mason and Bonnie were friends, and he goes, your mom was such a hard ass, like what a bitch. And I was like, oh no, what did she do? And he was like, she gave me such hell for being in Jews for Jesus. And I was just cracking up, because you know, I wouldn't have put it past my mom, but I'm like, God, she actually had to say something to them. Jeez. So it's very funny.
I was just I have a few things, but I remember
I have a few things too.
in high school, I was like a born again Christian. I got involved with like, my friend like invited me to some summer camp, and then we were like just roped into just youth groups.
Where was that?
This was outside of Chicago.
Okay.
But it was called Young Life. It's a nationwide like youth group.
Sounds scary.
It was fun. It kept us out of trouble. It was like, it was more like, it was more of a, I don't know, social fun group, but whatever. But I remember back then hearing about Jews for Jesus and thinking like, oh, they're cool. Like they
get the best of both.
They get it. They understand that Jesus is the real deal that they should be believing in. So we thought, I remember hearing about that, but
yeah, well, that's
anyway.
so funny because my mom is such an old school Jew, like, you know, in a weird way. It was so funny the other day. Buck was here and he was like, oh my God, I think your mom was like, she found a candle that had Jesus on it, was just staring at it. Like, it's not that she hates Jesus or that like Jews hate Jesus. I think they just think of Christians as being really stupid. And I think that's the whole thing with Jews, is that there's like, you know, not all Jews, so certainly I can't speak for all, but like the old school and the way that I would listen, they'd be like, oh, those goyim, what a bunch of idiots. You know, it would just come up like that. Like, goyim are like idiotic people. I'm like, okay, that's 99.9% of the rest of the world, you guys, just so you know. But Jews can be so like siloed in their thinking, and I think it does come from years of being like outcasts. And, you know, being intellectuals in some way.
Well, a lot of people who are very religious can be siloed in their thinking.
Well, yeah. And they all think the same thing. And that's why I hated it. I actually was an anti-Jew. The only thing is, if you're Jewish, you can't not be Jewish. But I hated being Jewish because my vision of Judaism was what you saw in the movie. Like my mom standing there pounding, you know, look at the Torah and read it right and be accurate about it, and, you know, kosher, and there's like all these rules and laws, and marry Jewish, and, you know, it's just this whole thing. And so I thought it was completely obnoxious and stupid. So
you didn't really get into it too much in the film about your own kind of sexuality, I don't think, did you?
No, and I left myself out of it because I figured Josh's story is the more powerful one. And, you know, and Josh sort of allowed me to be slightly able to have my back and forth in that moment when he was like, Rachel, your world was too gay. Because I said, why didn't you join my world? You know, and I was in a gay world. But yeah, I've always been bisexual. And, you know, I think for a while I've tried every letter of LGBT except for T. I'm not trans at all. But I just, you know, I've always just been free in my thinking. And even I don't like the rules of LGBT. Sometimes even now I'm like, God, you know what? Stop being such Nazis about like pronouns and telling me shit I don't want to know, because I've always been somebody that embraced the more like radical element of what it means to just be yourself. And I don't like rules. I don't like the word heterosexual either. I don't really believe these rules and words are actually true. But I think for me, I've always just been on the side of like freedom and liberation, and I've been attracted to people on all sides of the spectrum of gender. So yeah.
Is that why your partner Buck Angel is kind of like
He's the perfect man for me.
perfect
He's
man?
a gay
Because
man.
for those who don't know, Buck Angel is a transgender porn star or
Right. And
transgender
well,
person. Yeah.
actually more and more now he's just an activist, and he's like an educator. And he started out as like the very first trans porn star, and there's a movie about him called Mr. Angel, and you see actually how hard it was for him to even like enter into the gay porn world, where that's where he started, because the gays had all their rules, and it was like, well, what are you? You're not a gay man. How can you possibly be like, wow, you have a pussy? That's so insane. So where Buck came in and just threw all the rules away. I think that is why maybe we're meant to be. We're similar in that way. But yeah, I'm just we have an alignment, because he's also actually very outspoken and outside of the trans community. There's sort of like an agenda that can be, every community can have this sort of like, well, if you're in our community, you need to say the following things, X, Y, and Z. And he's always like, no, I'm not going to say that. And he calls himself a transsexual, which a lot of people in the community, quote unquote, will say, well, that's an outmoded word. And he loves that word, because he feels like, no, I actually switched. I was a female and now I'm a male. I'm not trans. I don't want to be in the middle space of being somebody who's this and now is that, or who's both. He is a man, and he's a man with female genitals. That's actually his position. That's his truth. So
the man with a vagina.
Exactly. And he's as male as they come. I mean, he's actually more broy than most people I've ever met.
Well, I actually notice that sometimes, trans people will be sort of more that what they transitioned into, what I mean?
Be.
Sort of, I notice that a lot. Yeah.
And to not speak for anyone trans, even being Buck's lover, it's just that for him, like, he had to fight for that space. So to get to be a man was like actually a massive amount of work. I mean, he looks incredible. He's like, works out a lot. I mean, he actually has to have like that.
How do you meet each other?
So I met him because, a year ago almost, I was having the film premiere at Outfest. And I had actually, maybe even longer than that, I had written to him because my friend was compiling a cool book about Circus of Books. And I had actually encountered Buck's work at Circus of Books years and years ago when he was just featured in a magazines. And I don't remember which of the magazines I was looking at, but he was in it. And I thought he was just fascinating. And I remember thinking, oh, well, let me think of somebody who might write something interesting for this Circus of Books book. And he sent in an amazing, really beautiful little paragraph or two with an image. And then when the premiere happened and we included it in the book, I wrote to him and I said, hey, do you want to come to the premiere of the film that we're doing? It's at Outfest. And he came, and in a weird way, like, he accidentally was my red carpet date, because I picked him up along the way. And then sure enough, we were taking photos together, and then we just hit it off, and really like our worlds aligned. It did feel like a kind of cosmic alignment because of everything Circus of Books and everything Buck Angel kind of weaves together in some cosmic way.
I have a question. If this is too personal, you don't have to answer, but like, are you like exclusively like together, or does Buck still do, porn movies, or
and
like,
do you date other people?
Do you have like an open, dating other
we're-
people kind of thing?
I mean, we're like, without actually having yet done it, we're pretty much a married couple, and we're like we're monogamous.
Monogamous. That's the word I was looking for.
Yeah. However, what I will say on the side of that is that, like, sex is his work and his livelihood. Not so much anymore, but if he, say, had a cool opportunity to do a scene with somebody, I mean, I'd be totally down. And like, why not? That'd be great. So yeah. And the idea of like having, a sexual partner join our situation, like, that's not out of the realm of possibility at all. But we're not dating other people. We're not in this way of like an open relationship. But I guess I have this thing where I know that sex can be work, so it's totally fine. And it's a thing that also mostly for him it would be with men, So I guess my like jealousy radar would, but he has had a few like of the biggest porn stars in the whole world who are female need or want to do a scene with him. And I think it would be great because, if it works out, he's still in the game, which is pretty shocking for a guy his age. He's 58. So, I think it's cool.
So I have a question. I actually have a lot of questions about what do you know? This is kind of a question for you, and it's a question for Josh. I don't know if you'd be able to answer this, but at what ages? Well, for you, at what age did you were you aware that you had an attraction to more than just what is expected, or in the sort of like conventional sense or whatever? And so like at what age did you realize you were queer? And then same question. I don't know if you know this answer, but same thing for Josh. Like at what age did he realize that he was gay? And that, I mean, I know when he came out of the closet was, well, at least
in college.
You guys was in college, but I mean, when was he aware of it? And did he, or like, did it take a while for him to come out to himself, kind of a thing? And same with you, and
I mean,
and then I have a follow-up question to that as well, but I'll save it.
Yeah, well, let's do the follow-up after this because it's fresh. My answers are fresh right now. I remember Josh saying to me, it's so interesting when you think about childhood sexuality. And actually, I have a 7-year-old kid. And so I see it's so interesting because Jonah is my 7-year-old. He's so straight and he's so into girls. And it's just like, at one point, there was this whole thing of like, people you might have crushes on, and his face turned really red when we were talking about this girl, and it was like, oh my god, he's totally so into this girl. And it's just like you see this sort of like confusion even with kids. But I remember with Josh, when you're gay and there's no like place in our culture for it, especially in the 80s, it gets very weird and confusing and like fucked up actually for kids. And Josh, I think around 7 and 8 is when most kids start having some sense of like, wow, I like that girl, or I think she's hot. And I think part of the reason why boys often are like, ew, girls, it's because they're actually into girls. And so you have to like create that whole schism. And so
that was me, and I carried that on until like my 30s.
Right.
Last week,
I wouldn't admit to that at liking girls. I was in closet. Yeah. Anyway, I was in the closet.
Yeah, you can be
in a different sense. But anyway,
well, hey, that's why you're a great comedian. you can channel it. No, but the thing that is about Josh and me. So he said to me, and I remember Josh as a little kid had only girlfriends. So if you were to like, well, most gay boys often only have gay friends or girlfriends. And why is that? Because they're really comfortable with girls and they were less comfortable with boys. So actually it's really cool. It says a lot about you, Brent, that you and Josh were friends at that age, because I think he felt very uncomfortable with a lot of guys, that he just was like, I think he had that feeling that they might know, and if they found out, and then it would call him a faggot, and there would just be this like weird processing. And so he, this is what is so sad for me. And I think it's maybe more unique to the boy experience, because I do think the whole like faggot, actually that word like overlay onto our cultural experiences really weighs more heavily on young boys. And for me, I remember also similarly always, the only people you could have crushes on were boys and men, and like those singers and rock bands that had long hair that were actually probably gay, most of them. But, so I had those crushes on, pop stars and the boy bands. But
who do you think was gay with the long hair that you're referring to?
Oh my God, I love the Black Crowes. Wasn't the lead singer of the Black Crowes? Isn't he gay? I don't know, but I thought they were so hot, and they're so gay.
Wait, he was dating, he was going out with Melanie Griffith's daughter. What's her name?
Oh, okay. So maybe he's not gay.
But maybe he is. I don't know.
Well, there you go.
Maybe he's all.
Yeah.
Well,
no, he totally could be.
He's undefined.
No, I always like
Counting Crows. That could be a different story. But he went out with Jennifer Aniston.
Wow. No, but I was always super attractive to the really androgynous long hair, like eyeshadow wearing men, the David Bowies of the world, that they were, in a tight bodysuit. So, but I remember
Twisted Sister.
Yeah, exactly. And I remember though, for me, there was a girl who was just like such an amazing sports girl. I would often just be like super fascinated with the girls who were like the badass girls who were sports girls, and they were always just so awesome. And I'd just be like, wow, and I don't know if that fascination was sexual attraction, because I didn't have an allowance for that until high school, when then I realized like, oh, okay, you could totally be into girls. You can actually like have crushes on women. And then I saw a movie, I think it was Heavenly Creatures.
With the Kate Winslet. It's directed by
Yeah,
Peter Jackson. I like that movie.
totally.
Actually, that movie made me want to be a lesbian, actually. A lesbian woman, actually. But anyway, yeah.
Twisted murder mystery story. Oh my God. You know what's so funny? My grandma lives in the building with the woman who that film is based on, who killed her mother as like a 12-year-old in New Zealand.
Really?
Anyway,
Wow.
because
Okay,
it's based on a true story. Well, yeah, anyway, so for me, I just, I think when you are queer or in the queer zone and there's no actual place for it, you don't really think of it as even having a crush. You're just like, okay, well, that's confusing. But yeah, so to answer your question, it was, I think for both of us later in high school when we probably found our way to erotic content, that we could.
Right. Okay. Huh. Interesting. Yeah. So, okay. Well, then and by that time and in high school for Josh too, he was fully aware of what your parents were dealing with business wise and stuff, right?
Yeah. But again, he compartmentalized it. Like, he was like, okay, well, that's the store. And this is what gave me that shocking, like crazy realization in the interview when I had with him. Cause, in a strange way, I also was not there for Josh. Like I probably should have been. Like I love Josh to death to this day. He's like my total dearest, I would fly instantly to London to see him. He lives in London but I was not there for him. I was a totally self-centered, queerdo punk teenager who was all about my friends and my scene. And I wasn't even thinking about Josh struggling. Josh to me was my annoying little brother. And I just would be like, okay, you're annoying. I gotta go. And I was not, an adult with him. And so part of my going through that like experience with that interview with him was like, oh my God, I was in a weird way this twisted version of gayness. I had drag queens. I had my friends who were gay guys were so over the top. They were like just everything you could imagine. And that wasn't the kind of gay Josh even was. So it was like, on the one hand, he's presented with the most extreme, body modification style, crazy weirdos from me. And then my parents, being in this world of like gay hardcore porn that he can't look at because he's not going to reveal that to himself. I just had this, sadness for that conflict that he was really processing. That was actually a very classic, I think, gay man, specific story. Although I do think I've now met lots of people, men and women, who felt that type of pressure that he felt. But I do think what gave me the ability to not feel that pressure was that I hung out with artists, and all the people I hung out with were countercultural. So it wasn't really even they were okay with sexuality. They were okay with just saying fuck you to culture.
Right. Well, my follow-up question would be, do you think in any way, because I know you guys were pretty kept separate from the store and stuff like that, but even in the documentary, Josh says, but he had wandering eyes, you're supposed to keep your eyes, if you had to go to the store for some reason, you were meant to keep your eyes on the floor. Do you think in any way at all that the sexually liberated
exposure
energy of the store and some exposure to that had any sort of effect on helping you and Josh realize things about yourself and stuff like that, or what?
Maybe. I mean, I found my way to the store actually after high school in some ways. Like I think in high school it was too whacked out. Like my friends were so into like crazy partying, like wildness, and actually they mostly went to the store for the drugs. Like my parents actually sold poppers and like the things that were whippets. Just it was so insane that's actually my friends were more going there for that. But then when I was, more doing like the art shows, and I came back from college, and that's when I was like, man, this place is so fucking awesome. And, I love it. And I just love what the store is all about. And I just felt like I just immersed myself in it when I was older. And I also liked the employees. I would go in there and hang out with two of the oldest employees who were friends of mine. And one of them actually just died, and they worked there for like 40 years. So, for me, it was like a family situation. Yeah.
We're going to wrap up the main
Cool.
part of the show. If you want to hang out for another 30 minutes or so, would you be interested?
Well,
But if you have to go, that's totally fine.
Yeah, let me see what else. You know what? If I can be like on mute, if I have to run and do any other stuff. But yeah,
Oh, no,
I'd love to
no
hear what
problem.
else you guys have
Yeah, because
going
there's
on.
plenty of more to talk about here. I'm
Yeah,
curious.
I also
Okay,
I
yeah,
haven't
we
really
can talk
gotten
some more.
into, kind of, anyway, yeah.
No, we can
All
talk
right.
more. That's fine.
But-
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's just wrap up the main show real quick. Rachel, thanks for
Mhm.
being on the show. And thank you for continuing to stay on the show. Everyone should check out Circus of Books on Netflix. It's an excellent documentary. And thank you to our sponsor, Louisville Vegan Jerky. And
Wow, I want to
we'll
try
see you.
that.
We'll see you next week. Yeah, this is really good stuff.
We'll put this in the description and stuff, but we didn't mention it in the episode. But aside from this movie, I mean, you do lots of other things as well. And so,
Yeah.
where can people find that stuff? Music and
Well,
art stuff
yeah,
that you do.
actually, I was going to ask you like where this podcast lives. Are you guys like on Instagram or something? Like, what's the best way I can also tell? You'll share it with me later, right?
Yeah, well,
Yes.
we do
Okay,
have
cool.
the Poundcast on Instagram. It's also
Okay,
on
great.
any podcast app.
Okay,
all
awesome.
all the stuff. It's on YouTube
I'm gonna look it up.
and
Poundcast.
wherever
and
you find
guys-
your favorite podcast, wherever quality podcasts are found.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, and so you can find me on I'm on Instagram at Future Clown. Funny enough, all one word, Future Clown. And then you can also find me on Twitter at Rachel Mason Art. And I think you could just Google me, Rachel Mason, with like art or music, because I actually am a musician too. And the end credit song of the film is a song that I wrote and created, and that's sort of what I'm most proud of as far as like my most recent music stuff. And I made a cool music video. It's called Give You Everything. And actually Buck is in that video along with Peaches, who's a really awesome
Love
feminist
Peaches.
art. Yeah,
Amazing.
so she's great. Yeah. So you can look up Rachel Mason, Give You Everything on YouTube if you want to get started in your exploration of the weird shit that I do in music. And that song is on all these different platforms except Spotify, because right now some weird shit happened with the Spotify algorithm and it like booted it off.
Oh.
If you know people at Spotify, try to get that song back on.
Oh man.
Anyway, I know. That's our world these days.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks
Well,
so
thanks
much.
again,
This was
Rachel.
fun. Awesome.
Thanks so much.
Okay,
Thanks a
cool.
lot, Rachel. Yeah.
Talk to you soon.
Congratulations
All right.
once again.
And if you want Buck on the show, let me know. I'm sure he'd enjoy it.
Oh yeah, that would be great.
Just
yeah,
email me.
Let's
that'd be
Okay, cool.
let's set that up for the future,
Yeah.
Brent.
Okay.
Yeah,
cool.
let's do
All
that,
right.
yeah.
Talk to you
Cool.
soon.
Okay, see ya.
Bye.
Thanks.
Bye.
Welcome to the Poundcast. Welcome to the Poundcast. Welcome to the Poundcast. Welcome to the Poundcast.